welcome back to Better Than Yesterday. So my name is Michael Jans van Rensburg, and as always, I'm joined by my very good friend Daniel Hammond, and we are here to talk to you guys today about an interesting topic that we wanted to bring you of what it means to be strong as a man in 2022 in this modern age that we live in. And this is actually a new series that Daniel and I are starting off called Wrestling with Topics. And basically, the whole idea behind this is me and Daniel want to start delving into and really, tackling topics that might be considered controversial and really get to the bottom of it. Both give our sides, almost like have a debate about it, and then hopefully by the end of it all, we'll come to a conclusion of what we really think about the topic, and hopefully we can have some very fruitful conversations. That's what this is all about. But this is the first of many episodes to come, and we're excited to get into this, man. But Daniel, I'm so keen for this conversation. But first of all, how you doing, man?
So I can't say I've been doing too well, man. I must say, I've got a bit of a cold. I've had it since last week, and it's been a bit hectic on the academic side, so feeling overwhelmed and a bit drained. But I'm trying to rest it out now. So yeah, we just gotta keep pushing forward, man. How are you doing?
Nah, I gotta say, bro, I think everyone is going through that sort of thing at the moment. In the area I live in, a lot of people are very sick, and one of them had a rough weekend, just dealing with sickness. But I must say, I'm doing well, bro. I'm doing very well actually. As a whole, really can't complain. I've been working hard as well. At the moment, I'm currently juggling studies and doing like a part-time job, working at a restaurant. So that's sort of like a new thing for me. I'm just sort of trying my best at the moment to juggle both of those things. But that's sort of the only difficult thing that I'm going through right now, man. But I'm enjoying that struggle. It's a struggle, but I'm enjoying that because it's just like a new
Yeah.
thing for me. Juggling those two things, man. But yeah, man. So to get into this conversation, bro, and it's interesting how we've just sort of shared, how we perhaps not doing our greatest, but
Yeah.
let's delve into it, man. So why we decided to talk about this topic, I remember, is that we've sort of noticed how, and a lot of people point out is how men and people back in the day used to be so different. People used to go to the war at age like 18, 19. They would usually have like a wife and kids by this time. We're talking about like the young men of the day back in, like, let's say the early 1900s. And there's such a standard of like men that were so much stronger back then. Like you said, they were going to the war, they had a
Yeah.
wife and kids by a certain age. And in this generation, things are just so different. But I think it's not always fair
Mhm.
to make that comparison because look, we do just live in different times now. So we
Yes,
want to sort of
exactly.
give a definition here, man, of like, or come to a conclusion somewhat of what it really means to be strong. Because cool, it's great that they were going to war and stuff like that, but like we don't have those same struggles, especially in the Western world, you could say, or in first world countries, or even second and third. So yeah, man, what I want to ask you is like, and then I'll definitely give my opinions on it as well. Is what do you think it means to be strong as a man? Let's say. So.
Yeah, so I think also we shouldn't call it strong, like, because I think
Mm,
what people say these days is it's the definition between like being a boy and being a man. So what
sure.
it means to being like a man in this
Wow.
day and age, I would say you have to be responsible. You have to like take responsibility for your life. You have to be honest. You have to live a life of integrity. And I feel that you should also be open to sharing, like, to having empathy towards others, and not just being this cold, rock solid hard man that just keeps to himself.
Mm.
That's basically like what comes to mind, bro. But I'll definitely, as the conversation goes on, I'll open up more as things come to mind. But what's your take on it?
That's interesting, bro. Because I know, traditionally it's not seen as a very manly thing to have empathy per se. It's obviously something that's
Mhm.
slightly more on the feminine side. But I agree in that,
Yeah.
and I think that's why this conversation is necessary because it's not necessarily the same thing as it was, 100 years ago. We're now living in 2022,
Yeah.
and it's a very different world. So yeah, man, I think for me, what it takes to be a man, um, sure, bro. I think, like you say, having that ability to take responsibility, like you say, I think a level of independence is necessary as a man.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think the man is often seen as like the provider, so you have to be able
Yeah.
take care of yourself and also take care of your loved ones. I think that's something that inherently is the traits of someone who I would see as like a strong man, and yeah, someone who treats others yeah, with respect, definitely. I would say not
Yes.
not someone who's just like you say, an asshole. I think sometimes we can see
Yeah,
that as like a
exactly.
very strong man, is like a guy who's just an asshole and is so rude to everyone. But I don't think I don't think that's a strong man. I think that's just a man who doesn't have his anger and all these kind of things in check. I think a strong man actually
Yeah.
does have that kind of stuff in check. And an interesting thought is like, there's that philosophy of stoicism and to be stoic,
Yes.
which means to be unreactive and to sort of
Mhm.
focus on the things that you can control. I think that whole philosophy
Yeah.
is something that, for me, really sort of describes quite well what a man should be and how a man should act. Is to be stoic in a way, in that, yeah, he's not controlled by his emotions. I think that's what makes
Hmm.
men perhaps different from women. And there's no slander; it's just sort of a natural thing. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah? I think men should have a better control of their emotions, and they shouldn't let their emotions control them. Men think in a perhaps
Exactly.
more logical way, and they don't let emotions come into play as much. So I think that's
Mhm.
definitely a big part of like what makes a man, even in this modern age.
Yeah.
And because yeah, I think we have to set these standards. These days there's so
Mhm.
much conversations about the fact that there's no difference between men and women, but I think there
And
definitely is
woman.
difference. And we
Yeah.
sort of have to be aware and sort of establish like where that standard is. Perhaps it's not the same as it was 100 years ago, but there still has to be like a standard of what a man should look like, and what a woman should
Yeah.
look like in a way that produces a world we all want to live in. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
I
And
think
actually wanna
yeah, go for it, bro.
Yeah, yeah, so I actually want to cut in there and say that, like, back then men were painted as these, like you said, aggressive guys, and
Mm,
everyone was scared of them. Like the strong men is like people were even like afraid to raise their opinions towards these men. And it's kind of like they enforced
sure.
respect and like they demanded it by using their muscles or whatever, or like
Yeah,
just portraying that aggression, and you couldn't really stand up towards them. But I wouldn't say that's how it should be now. You should be able to be a leader by not like enforcing respect, by just like getting respect naturally,
wow,
being able to listen to the opinions of others and even act upon it if you feel that it's right. But people should be comfortable in your presence and they should feel safe. So it shouldn't be this aggressive type thing, because I know back then, after men came from the war, they were like these grumpy people and they were like super cold and sort of hostile. And
mm,
I don't think we should be like that back then. And another thing that I wanted to hop into is like, how back then, like the women lived way longer than the men, because I think they would die of heart attacks and strokes because they
sure,
didn't let their emotions out. So
sure,
with like the stoicism, we should have that balance between keeping our emotions in check and being able to control them, but also letting them out in one or another way. So that's actually like something that I'm wrestling with. Like, who are you vulnerable towards? Like, are you
yes.
vulnerable towards your partner, or do you identify a friend that you can just be vulnerable towards, or how do you let out those emotions so that it doesn't affect your health?
Bro, it's such a good question because, yeah, I also really want to delve into that. I think this is where this topic gets very interesting because, we've spoken about it on this channel, like mental health, for example. We have a whole video
Yeah.
talking about our personal like struggles with mental health, and
Yes.
I think it's very progressive, and it's been a very good step that men are sort of pushed these days to talk about their mental health more and to yeah, like talk about how they feel more and that sort of thing. I think it is taking steps forward, definitely, because to deny that part of yourself, we've sort of spoken about this before. We've heard these ideas before, is that to deny that whole part of yourself, that emotion side and that feeling side, is to deny your humanity in a way. You know what I mean? Because despite the fact that men and women are
Yeah.
different, there
Exactly.
is men still have that emotional side. It might just be a bit smaller, but
Mhm.
or less prominent. But they definitely still have that feeling side and that sort of side that leans more on the edge of emotion. So to deny that side of yourself
Yeah.
entirely, yeah, you completely deny your humanity, and you'll end up
Mm.
feeling, I think, even worse. And that's why, a big problem in our society today
Exactly.
is that so many men take their own lives. I think suicide rates are so much
Yeah.
higher in men compared to women. And I think a big
Mm.
reason of that is the fact that men haven't been able to express themselves. But here's where it gets interesting, man, because like you say,
Yes.
so men these days are encouraged to share their emotions more and all these kind of things. But from my personal experience, I've got to say, is that I don't actually think that men get rewarded when they do those kind of things. So they're
No.
encouraged to do it,
Mm-mm.
but and I've heard lots of talks and people saying, oh yeah, you should let your emotions out. But I feel like as soon as I, as a man, do that kind of thing and I actually let my emotions out, um, and I, perhaps cry in front of people, let's say, or yeah, like something like that. If I were to cry in front of some people,
Yeah.
I think people I've seen it in the past is that I will actually get viewed as less because of that, because of
Weaker.
doing that, and weaker,
Yes.
100%.
Mm.
People will say, oh yeah, don't worry, you let it out, cry, but then afterwards they'll be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's actually like really weak. You know what I mean? So I think there's almost a
Yeah.
double standard, because they're saying you
Uh,
should do it,
it
but then when
is.
you do it, you don't actually get the reward for it. Society almost
Mm-hmm.
laughs at you then. So it's so funny that they're encouraging you to do
Yes.
it, but then as soon as a man breaks down in tears, I saw it with a speaker that we respect quite a lot is Jordan Peterson. Recently he did an interview
Mm-hmm.
with Piers Morgan, and they were talking about this topic, actually, like a similar thing. They were talking about the struggles of young men. And anyway, Jordan Peterson, while he was speaking about it, he sort of was driven to tears by how passionate he was about the topic. And then you look at all the articles that are written
Mm-hmm.
about that, and they're literally saying, look at how he broke down in tears, look at how he was so weak. They literally like were calling him weak, and like writing all these articles about how it's so
Yeah.
bad that he was crying. But then those same companies will be like having these campaigns about why men should talk more about their feelings. So there's sort of these things don't combine. Society is telling us one
Yeah.
thing,
It's, and
but
it's
then
very difficult.
when you do it, they don't reward you. You know what I mean? They actually
Mm.
laugh at you and
Yeah.
bring you down. So how do you think, like, what do you think the resolution to that is, man? And what's your experience with that
Yeah.
kind of thing been like?
Exactly, bro. So it's like very difficult to navigate, and
Sure.
sometimes you'll catch yourself like, or I'll even catch myself like wrestling with these thoughts. It's like, should I be vulnerable? Should I not? Should I just be this strong man and not like show my emotions because
Yeah.
of like what society will do, like with that example that you just gave? Because Jordan Peterson is this strong man, and like he writes all these good books, and he's always providing so much value to life. So
Sure.
he is definitely a high value man. And just because he got a bit emotional and passionate about those sort of things that he was talking about, how young men are like struggling to navigate this whole thing in life because
Sure.
of like this topic that we're talking about. It's like, are we weaker these days and should we be stronger? But then it's also like it's a difficult thing. So uh, to kind of get to like a solution for this, or how I've been trying to handle it
Mm,
is that when I start feeling like overwhelmed or a bit more like emotional or like, yeah, emotionally drained, then I would sort of distance myself from people and try and sort it out like within my room, in my personal space alone, like maybe take a walk to the
sure.
mountains or like wherever you're free, somewhere in nature, and just deal with those emotions and come back a stronger, better man. So I wouldn't say suppress your emotions and try and pretend that it's not there, because obviously it is there, and if you keep suppressing it, sometime it's going to burst out, whether it be men taking their own lives, going into like alcohol and drug abuse,
Sure.
or these sort of like these negative things. Try and do it in a positive way. Like we've been speaking about like journaling. So definitely
Yeah.
try and like journal and find alternative solutions than displaying it publicly.
Sure.
And sometimes if you do it publicly, then just take that bash, because you know as yourself that you're a high value man, and you have to sometimes think higher of yourself than what other people think of you, so that whenever that negativity does come across your life, you have that belief in yourself that you're not going to be influenced by it as much. I think Jordan Peterson, being a high value man, could just brush it off because he
Yeah.
knows. he knows his worth. So
Yeah,
yeah,
man. And
definitely.
that's
Then
part of what makes a man strong here is knowing your worth here.
it
And
is
sure,
definitely.
yeah, like not letting society affect you really, or what other people think affect you. Very true as
Mm.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I think that's very good. I think that's very good.
And also being confident in what you do
Sure.
and not doing it with insecurity. So if you're gonna cry, be confident in crying. But
There we
like I
go.
said, there's other ways you can handle it, like journaling, going for a walk, distancing yourself from people, and just like trying to sort it out within your room and like your
Sure.
personal space, or identifying a really good long-term friend and then talking to them about it, like
Yeah.
discussing it with a few people that you can trust and whose views won't change because of you being vulnerable towards them.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to say, man,
Yeah,
when I think of like a solution, I think we have to sort of look inwards. And I think we as men sort of, again, need to sort of step up and take the responsibility and sort
yeah,
of be there for each other. I think that's the best thing. And that's the best
mm,
solution that we can create is actually to, not look at outside of the world and be like, why aren't they helping us enough? Or like, why are they laughing at us? Why are they doing these things? I think we should just, the solutions to that perhaps is that we should really try and be there for ourselves, for our brothers.
for each
You know what I
other.
mean? If
Yes,
everyone that watches this video and you and I, uh, you know, from here on outwards, like we start to, you know, be that rock, like that long term friend, like you say, that the guy can go to when he's not feeling well, and is going through something.
exactly.
Be that person for a friend of yours, for a brother of yours
Yeah,
that's going through something tough. We need to
mm,
sort of build each other up. We need to um, allow each other to share those emotions because like you say, I think oftentimes when you show those kind of emotions in public, you just end up, you'll get laughed at it for it. And this is just a
mhm,
sad fact. If a woman, were to cry, for example, on TV, usually everyone will rush to their defense and be like, oh, what's wrong, you know
yeah,
what I mean? But then you look at what happened with Jordan Peterson, and there's nowhere near the same sort of reaction. So that's just a sad fact of our society. But I think we just need to
mhm,
look inwards and say, what can we do better? And I think the best thing that we can do is just be there for our brothers. Be that
exactly.
person, like I said, that they can go to. And the more that we start to do that, then hopefully things will change. And
Yeah,
we can only do that up for ourselves, I think.
yeah,
But yeah, man.
definitely.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so another like example that I have of someone also like a guy displaying his emotional side, like this was because like it's difficult if you're a man that like wears like your heart on your sleeve. So I
Sure.
know like Cristiano Ronaldo walked out early because he didn't get onto the game. And that also like it just shows he got bashed for that and actually like not rewarded positively for showing his emotions then. So
Sure.
definitely you can keep your emotions in check, but yeah, it's a difficult thing. But like you said, as men, we should be there for each other, and we can definitely be there for each other because it's relatable. We know what each
Yep.
other like are going through because you've been at a low, you've been at a time when you
Yep.
wanted to like burst out into tears and like and show your emotions. So you know when the next guy also wants to do that and when he's at that place, and therefore you can relate and you can actually be supportive and really like show empathy then towards him.
Amen, bro. That's so good. And yeah, man, I want to sort of touch on this idea that I know you've heard of it, man. But for the listeners, there's this idea of like the fact that weak men create hard times. And this is also an interesting thing why this topic is so important is because the saying is weak men create hard times, um, but then hard times create strong men, and strong men create the
Yeah,
good times. So we need to be those strong men.
yes,
I think currently we are living in a time that is probably, I think we are at least definitely moving towards the hard times, man. I think there's a lot of things in our world that are brewing that are perhaps not so good. You look at like the wars that are happening in Eastern Europe at the moment, and all of these
yeah,
political issues that are happening around the world at the moment. I think there's a lot of things brewing, and we're perhaps moving towards a hard time. And that's happened because of weak men, I think, in the past who are now creating these hard times. So we need to be the strong men moving into the next generation that create the good times for our children. You know what I mean? I think that's also a big thing of being a
yeah,
man is like you don't do things for the benefit of just yourself. You do things for the benefit of your loved ones and like the
of
people you care
yourself.
about. there's this
Yes.
statement, man. And I want to get your thoughts on it, but it's so true. It really hit me. It really hit me quite hard. Um, and I think this sums up, what a man really is. And it said, the quote said, be the person at your father's funeral that everyone else can lean on and can, be the shoulder that they can cry on, and that, they look up to in that time.
Yeah.
So obviously, I don't know about you, man, but I think
Yes.
one of the most like saddest things I can imagine is, like the thought of my father dying, or a parent, or even any loved one dying. But
Sure.
especially my father, someone who I've looked up to my whole life. But that quote is just very powerful, because
Yeah.
what that's saying is, you as the son should be the person at your father's funeral, despite the fact that you'll be completely torn up inside. You need to remain strong, and be there for perhaps your mother, who as well, is falling apart at that time. Your sister, you know what I mean, who at that time will be falling apart.
Yes.
You need to be that one that they can lean on in that moment of complete, like, sadness and despair. And I think that's such a strong thing, man. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of man I want to be, is the man who other people can rely on at my
Yes.
father's funeral. Do you know what I mean? That sort of idea.
Exactly. Yeah. Definitely. I think this idea comes from First Man. He put it in one of his videos. Yeah, you have to be that man who can always be relied upon and who can be looked towards. And that is you can only be that man if you're taking care of yourself and like your mental health. And like you also said, adding value to life and trying to change other people's lives and not just trying to be there for yourself. So,
Yes.
firstly, yes, you have to be selfish and be there for yourself, but that's in order to be selfless and be there for others, because I think that's where we get most of our purpose from as men, just to add value to life and to be valuable. And that's where the statement high value man comes from, because you're valuable to society. You're not just there taking up
Yes.
space, but you're actually like influencing that space and creating other men who can also influence the space and just take it further. And then in that, creating like that effect, which will then create a good life. But on that statement, which you said, like weak men create like hard times and hard times create strong men. So as being like strong men these days, I think we should try and break that cycle and then not give our children that like benefits or like just be there and comfort them so much that they become weak men or weak girls.
Sure.
So we actually have to like keep that cycle of keeping strong men. So you have to keep that balance and not give
There
too
we go,
much
man.
comfort or too much good times so that men don't become weak again, because we see this is a cycle that's been keep like it's kept going on. So we have to be that generation that breaks that cycle.
Wow.
That's definitely important, bro, and
Yeah.
something that we should try and change. That's why we should create this thing of being strong, but like you said, having that empathy and like teaching yourself to learn how to navigate through these things and make life a better place for the future, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, bro. That's such an interesting thought. We could make a whole nother video about that. Is how,
Mm,
like you say, comfort, and perhaps things have been so easy and cushy for us, growing up our whole lives. You could say
mm,
that it's created a whole generation of weak men. Um, yeah, man.
yeah,
Very, very interesting. Um, and yeah, I think men, in a way, like you say, we need a struggle. We need something to contend with, to battle with. That really gives us
yes,
a sense of purpose. And I think we've also made videos on this in
mm,
the past. I think one of the biggest thing that a man needs is a sense of purpose. So yeah, I think
yes,
we'll, there's so many different ideas of this that we could delve into. But I think what's been really good about this conversation, man, is that we've sort of identified, you know, what men used to be a few hundred years ago, and how it's different. But we've also sort of realized some issues in society at the moment with men's problems and that kind of thing. But we've given a solution to that as well. And yeah, I hope that moving forward
yeah,
from this video, we can sort of, yeah, or try to be the best men that we can be, but not for ourselves. Like you say, I
mm,
think that's one of the biggest thing is trying to create a better world for everyone else around us, man. I think that's why
exactly.
we're having this kind of conversation.
Yeah. So one more question for you is like in the beginning of the video, you asked me that question of what do you think a strong man should be? So after this conversation that we've had, how would you like conclude that and sum it up? Do you have a different
Sure.
definition? And I'll also give my take on that after you.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think after having this conversation, a few topics that you've brought up, which I like, man, is the fact that yeah, you have to have you can't deny that side of yourself, that human side that does feel, that has emotion and all those sort of things. So yeah, man, I think my view of a man is someone who definitely is someone that isn't controlled by their emotions, and I think that's something that I still definitely stand by. As a strong man is someone that does the right thing and follows their gut. But I think the biggest thing as well is, like you say, a strong man is, and to be a man is also to do it with confidence. To not be influenced by
Yes.
what other people and what everyone else around you is wanting you to do. The whole of the rest of the world might be telling you to do one thing, but if you believe in your gut that the other path is right, then that's what you should do. So I think a man is someone who
Yeah.
has strong self convictions and will be strong in those things and will do go with his guts and not be influenced by other people, and will do that sort of thing with confidence. I think that's probably something
Yeah.
that has come into my mind more so before this video, man. And how about you?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I would like to add like a biblical aspect, and
Amen.
I think
Amen.
there's a thing of being a man like God's heart, or a man towards God's heart, like a man of God's heart. So you have
Sure,
to
bro.
look at what Jesus did and follow the examples of those men back then, like a David or a Daniel. And we know they all had mistakes, and
Yeah,
we're human as
all
men.
flawed.
We're always also gonna have mistakes, but it's definitely so being a strong man is owning up to your mistakes. Don't be afraid to apologize. So
There we
sometimes you
go.
have to let your ego slide. I also want to just agree with being confident, being there for others. Like you said, you have to be there at times when it is difficult, so that people can actually rely on you. So you have to be. Lastly, I would say that you should be able to take responsibility for your life, and you should be able to just just always try and be a better man and add value to society in one or another way.
Amen. Yeah, like you say, bro.
Yeah,
I think Jesus is the best example of how we can live our lives 100%. So yeah, that's the impossible mark that we can aim for each day is to
yeah,
live how he did, man. But bro, I've loved having this conversation with you,
yes,
man. I think this is an exciting series, bro. I think this is a cool thing moving
yes,
forward. Hopefully you guys listening and watching have enjoyed this. Please let us know your thoughts on this topic. And yeah, we don't want to just exclude women from this conversation. We wanted to have this kind of conversation because
yes, exactly.
yeah, Daniel and I are both young men, and we're sort of navigating in this world that is there's so much talk and debate around about at the moment about what a man should be and what a woman should be, and we wanted to give our sort of thoughts
Yes,
on that, man. But yeah, I've loved this conversation, man. I'm looking
yeah,
forward to
exactly.
wrestling with
Me
many more
too.
topics. But that's it from us. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, awesome. Bye, guys.
much love from better than yesterday.